Okay, so now we're working on the mandibular first premolar. Same idea. Heat up the wax, put a ball, put it out of occlusion, high in occlusion, and then crank it down so it touches. One of the things that I like to do to start out doing is I draw these in because this tooth is really weird, and people tend to turn it this way, too far this way, because they want to see it straight. But if you draw in the marginal ridges, then you can see how the central fossa can line up, right on that line, and that's what we want. So I kind of tweak it the way it's supposed to be first, and then I get it into place. And one of the things I want to make sure to do here's an important thing. Now's a good time to, when you're setting these premolars for a little more view, is lute down, or actually melt the wax around these canines, the maxillary canines, and then I move it out of occlusion. And one of the reasons I do this is, one, so you can see this contact better. You can see this contact better, make sure it's contacting correctly right there between this buccal cusp of this mandibular first premolar and the marginal ridge of the maxillary first premolar. The other reason is that when we do excursives later, we're going to want to bring this, it's a lot easier to bring this maxillary canine down to touch this one and the mandibular canine, to touch the mandibular first premolar and canine, rather than trying to move these two into touch that. So I can see just from looking at it here, it's a little bit off, but it's almost there. So I'm going to tweak this angulation just a tiny bit, and then I want to make sure I lute it down to get it stable before I make the final little tweaks. But this tooth is hard because it's weirdly shaped, and it only has a few contacts, and it can also get in the way. I mean, this thing can cause problems for you in excursives and all sorts of, and centrics especially. So the most important thing is just getting locked in. You want, especially for centrics, you want this cusp tip locked in right in line with that marginal ridge. And I mean, and if you notice how, if you want good centrics, that's another good tip for centrics. If you want good centrics, you want to have the center of that cusp tip to line up in the center of where it's supposed to contact. So here there's two marginal ridges. You want it to be right in the center. Here you want the center of this to line up with, right with the edge of that marginal ridge. The center of the cusps are lined up with the marginal ridge. So we're letting it cool down and get pretty solid. So in the meantime, you can take a look from the lingual and see, how well socked in it is. It looks pretty well socked in, but I'm going to go ahead and just give it a little bit of a push just to make sure in there. And then I'll come back here and make sure that everything looks good. So there, that looks pretty socked in. It looks pretty straight up, and now I can go ahead and check excursives, and that looks pretty good. We have a good majority of those excursives done. But again, more importantly, centrics are the key. Both buccal and lingual, don't forget about those. So from here, normally we'd have both sides set, so we're going to go ahead and set the other side real quick, and then we're going to work on the mandibular anteriors. And remember, we set the mandibular second molar absolutely last, because that tends to cause a lot of problems in excursives, and if anything, you can grind that thing out and just adjust it to whatever you need to do. But now we're going to work on the other side, and then go on from there.